Hi there, this is John Wilkinson again from History Made Easier, looking at how Mao the nationalist determined to take the fight to the Japanese as they occupied China during World War II. The Japanese had invaded Manchuria in 1931 and set up Manchukuo, their puppet regime, in 1932, with Pu Yi, the last Qing emperor, as their nominal emperor and regent. Then, in December 1935, they looked to extend their formal control, demanding the recognition of an autonomous region that took in 6 northern provinces. It was this that led the nationalists to vacate Beijing, leading to anti-Japanese demonstrations in Beijing, as well as Shanghai and Wuhan. Among the banners carried were many declaring, "Stop the civil war, unite against the enemy." Very similar to Mao's dictum, "Chinese do not fight Chinese." The communists were more in tune with the mood of the people than were the nationalists. Now, with the forces gathered at Yan'an now grown to 40,000, the communists proposed an immediate end to the civil war, the establishment of a government of national defence, the restoration of political freedoms, as well as reforms, a united front to fight the Japanese, and free passage for the Red Army to fight them. It was a win-win situation for the communists. If the proposals were accepted, it would drive a wedge between the two wings of the Kuomintang. If they were not accepted, the communists would be seen as the true defenders of China's national interests. Mao was very aware now of the increasing hostility amongst ordinary Chinese in the face of Japanese imperialism, and too in the face of Chiang's appeasement of the hated foreigner and his policy of trading space to buy time. Even if Chiang's policy made some sense, China was so vast that the more Japan tried to occupy, the more it would be stretched, and so the weaker it would be. It was hardly inspiring, and resulted in splits amongst the nationalists, and even mutinies in their armies. In April 1936, Mao set out to strike a deal with the local warlord, Jian Shuili-Lang. Jian was ruthless and could be devious, but he was a patriot, a warlord who had accepted the Kuomintang's leadership. Jian was nevertheless impressed by the manner in which the communists were taking the fight to the Japanese. So he agreed a truce with them, in order that they might both fight their common enemy. Mao, meanwhile, set out to woo the nationalists into joining with the communists in an anti-Japanese alliance. Chiang Kai-shek's support wasn't the target. The hope was to undermine his policy of appeasement and appeal to the Kuomintang's anti-Japanese faction. Mao also had in mind that if nothing else, such appeals for a united front would appeal to Soviet sensitivities, who had woken to the threat the Japanese presented them when they invaded Manchuria. So, Mao made the fight against the Japanese the central focus of the purpose of Yan'an. Indeed, this allowed the communists to develop the myth that the reason for leaving Jiangxi was to fight the Japanese. As the negotiations took place, CCP propaganda changed. Their slogan, "Resist Japan, oppose Chiang," was seen as counterproductive. Oppose Japan and stop the civil war seemed to offer a better way forward. Opposing Chiang should be set aside. it could be picked up again later. Chiang, however, saw an opportunity to rid himself of the communists once and for all. In December 1936, Chiang flew to Xi'an to tell Jiang in no uncertain terms that rather than joining forces with the communists to fight the Japanese, he must help him defeat the communists. Instead, Jiang ordered his men to arrest Chiang and his general staff. Though Chiang fled, he was captured, hiding in a cave. Now, Mao and others in the CCP's leadership wanted Chiang to be put on trial before the judgment of the people, so that his crimes might be publicly exposed. The party's stance was conveyed to Jiang, but Jiang wanted to offer Chiang a way out. In a telegram to the nation, sent to the nationalist government, he said that he felt Chiang had been misguided, and that he should continue as the leader, but only if he would bring about a government of all patriotic forces to fight the Japanese, ending the civil war and restoring political freedoms in the process. It was all the demands that the communists had made in their negotiations for a new united front. The Soviet Union, for their part, in looking out for their own interests, muddied the waters. Stalin bizarrely first interpreted the events as another Japanese plot to prevent an anti-Japanese government. This was quickly followed, however, by a more considered response, but which still saw Jiang's intervention as unhelpful. It emerged later that the Russians had been in negotiation with Chiang to agree a Sino-Soviet treaty. The thing was, the Soviet Union's intervention only served to weaken both the CCP's position and Jiang's. Chiang was released and flew back to Nanjing with Jiang. Jiang would pay a heavy price. Court-martialed, sentenced to 10 years imprisonment, amnestied but placed under house arrest, even taken to Taiwan when the nationalists fled, he was not released until his 90th birthday. The communists, however, were still able to reap maximum propaganda benefit from the whole affair. They were able to portray themselves as true nationalists, prepared to put everything else to one side in order to focus on defeating the foreign enemy. Chiang could lead the fight. All that mattered was that the enemy was engaged and defeated. Negotiations between the communists and Chiang were renewed, with Chiang and Zhou Enlai taking the lead. But they were not really making any substantive progress until the Japanese push on Beijing forced everyone's hands. The communists had just two key demands: a united front against Japan and the legalization of communist activities. Chiang, however, still dragged his feet, and on July the 28th, 1937, an ultimatum was eventually given. The Red Army would move to the front, whether the Kuomintang agreed or not. The Japanese, meanwhile, having occupied Beijing and Tianjin, attacked Shanghai. Only then did Chiang relent, and a second united front, of sorts, became a reality. It was a pivotal moment. For Mao, the pivotal moment. The Japanese had done what Mao had failed to do. They had brought the Communist Party back from the dead, back on the national stage, back with a purpose that Chinese across the social spectrum could unite behind. It came at a price for both sides. The communists agreed to abandon armed insurrection, to abolish the term Red Army, and to place the communist troops under the nominal command of Chiang's Central Command. The Soviet Republic of Yan'an would become a special region of China, and the confiscation of land from landlords would cease. In return, the Kuomintang would end the civil war, release political prisoners, and establish democratic freedom. It was a deal which both sides would wriggle out of. Let's be clear, this was not a repeat of the United Front of the 1920s that had almost destroyed the CCP. Its organisational structure broken, its ranks decimated. Mao had learned his lessons well. This is the beginning of Mao's push for power. It didn't seem so at the time. A lot of things had to go Mao's way, but Mao had put the communists in a position to shake off the shackles of foreign powers and unite China under communist leadership. I hope this has been useful for you. Don't forget, there's my website, History Made Easier. That's there to help you too. Thank you so much for listening, and good luck with your studies. Cheers.